the charity that changes everything. They say a person's true character is revealed in the moments no one else sees. And Ramadan is filled with those silent moments. Moments when a person quietly opens their wallet, not to show the world they're generous, but to show Allah that their heart is still alive. Tonight's story begins with a man named Omar, a successful accountant living in Chicago. From the outside, everything looked perfect. Nice apartment, stable job, good friends. But inside, his life felt hollow. Work, sleep, bills, repeat. His days were mechanical, emotionless, almost spiritually numb. Ramadan arrived, but for him, it felt like just another month. Until one night, after Taraweeh, he found himself walking past a small shelter on Devon Avenue. A mother was sitting outside with two kids, trying to share one small cup of warm soup among them. The children didn't complain. No crying, no tantrums, just quiet acceptance. That scene hit him harder than any sermon ever had. He froze because deep inside, he knew he had never experienced hunger in his entire life. Not the hunger that hurts, not the hunger that humiliates, not the hunger that makes a mother pretend she's not hungry so her children can eat. He kept walking, but something pulled him back. For the first time in years, he felt something inside his chest move. Compassion, maybe. Guilt, definitely. But more than that, a strange need to purify something inside him. Something that felt dusty and forgotten. He walked up to the woman and quietly handed her a folded bill. She hesitated, eyes filled with embarrassment. Omar lowered his gaze and said softly, "Please, it's not from me. It's from Allah." That single moment shifted something inside him. It wasn't the amount of money. It wasn't charity for show. It was the feeling, the almost instant lightness in his heart, as if someone had just wiped fog off a mirror inside him. He didn't realize it yet, but that was the beginning of his transformation. The beginning of learning why Zakat isn't just about giving wealth. It's about purifying the soul. As he walked home that night, for the first time in a long time, he felt alive. The night that wouldn't let him sleep. Omar reached home that night, but something inside him felt restless. He tried watching TV, nothing. Tried scrolling through his phone, meaningless. Tried sleeping, impossible. It was as if his heart had tasted a feeling it hadn't felt in years. Purpose. And now it refused to return to its old emptiness. He kept replaying that mother's face in his mind. The tired eyes, the quiet strength, the way she tried to hide her own hunger so her children could eat. And those kids, grateful even for a small cup of soup. No complaints, no demands, just patience. That image kept tugging at him like a thread. Around 2 a.m., he finally sat up in bed, ran his hands over his face, and whispered to himself, "What am I even doing with my life?" It wasn't guilt anymore. It wasn't even sadness. It was awakening. He opened his laptop and began searching. Why Zakat is important in Islam. How charity purifies the soul. Ramadan charity benefits. He found answers he had ignored. His whole life teachings that spoke about how wealth becomes spiritually polluted when it's only collected, never shared. How Zakat cleans that pollution the same way water cleans dirt. How giving doesn't decrease wealth. It actually increases it in ways money can't measure. But there was one line that hit him hardest. A person's wealth is purified when they give for the sake of Allah, not for the sake of being seen. At that moment, he realized something about himself. He had spent years chasing success, buying things he didn't need, filling his life with noise. But his soul was starving just like that mother and her children. Suddenly, he felt another puller need to return to the shelter. Not tomorrow, not next week. Right now, he grabbed his jacket, stepped into the quiet Chicago night, and started walking toward Devon Avenue again. The streets were empty, the cold wind brushing against his face, almost as if reminding him that spiritual wake-ups don't happen in comfort. They happen in moments of discomfort, when Allah wants you to feel something deeper. When Omar reached the shelter, it was silent. The mother and children were asleep on a thin mattress. He didn't want to wake them, but he wanted to do something meaningful. So he quietly placed an envelope near them, cash, enough for several weeks of meals, and walked away before anyone noticed. For the first time in so long, he felt peace, the envelope that changed his heart. By the next afternoon, Omar felt different. A strange calmness settled in his chest, like someone had poured cool water over months of hidden anxiety. But deep inside, he wondered if that envelope actually reached the mother, or if someone else found it first. After work, he walked toward the shelter again, not out of doubt. His intention was already pure, but out of a new feeling he hadn't experienced in a long time, concern for someone other than himself. When he arrived, the scene was completely different from the night before. The mother wasn't sitting outside this time. She was inside the shelter, speaking to the volunteers with a bright, relieved smile on her face. Her kids were eating warm food, laughing like children finally allowed to breathe. Omar kept his distance. He didn't want her to see him. He didn't want credit. He just wanted to witness whether the help he gave made a difference. And it had. One of the volunteers walked out and noticed Omar standing quietly near the entrance. "Are you here to donate?" she asked with a warm smile. Omar hesitated for a second, then nodded. She led him inside and explained how donations help pay for meals, blankets, temporary housing, medicine, and even job placements. Omar listened carefully, absorbing every detail. For the first time, he realized something powerful. Charity isn't just giving money. It's giving hope. It's giving dignity. It's giving someone a chance to breathe again. He looked around at the volunteers who spent long hours helping strangers, at the families who found relief in this small building, at the children who had joy on their faces because someone cared. And he felt a gentle nudge in his heart. He wanted to do more. When the volunteer gave him a donation form, he didn't think twice. He wrote an amount much larger than he had planned, not to impress anyone, not out of guilt, but because he finally understood the secret. Wealth grows when you give it, and the heart heals when you share it. As he handed the form back, the volunteer said something that wrapped around him like a warm blanket. "Allah bless you. Whoever left that envelope last night saved a family." Omar smiled softly. He didn't reply. He didn't need to, because for the first time in his life, he felt like Allah had used him for something good, something meaningful. the wealth that didn't belong to him. For the next few days, something extraordinary began happening inside Omar. Every time he earned, every time he spent, every time he looked at his bank account, he felt a strange shift in perspective. It was as if his money didn't feel like his anymore. Not in a scary way, in a humbling, awakening way. He began understanding something scholars often say, but people rarely feel. Your wealth is not truly yours. You're just a trustee. Allah is the owner. This realization cracked open a door in his heart he didn't even know existed. One evening, while sitting alone in his apartment, he opened his laptop to calculate his zakat, something he hadn't done in years. He always thought of it as a financial burden, a religious chore, a checklist item. But this time, he approached it differently. He whispered to himself, "If Allah gave me everything I have, why should giving a small portion back feel difficult?" As he calculated, something surprising happened. The number he needed to give wasn't small. It was bigger than he expected. For a moment, his old self, the one obsessed with saving, planning, holding tight, tried to take over. But then he remembered the mother's smile, the kids laughing, the volunteers' words. Whoever left that envelope saved a family. And suddenly, the hesitation dissolved. He made the transfer immediately. No second thoughts. No fear of losing money. As soon as he clicked confirm, he felt a surge of warmth inside his chest. A lightness, a release, almost like a spiritual detox, clearing every layer of greed he had unknowingly built over the years. Later that night, Omar visited the masjid for Isha. The Imam spoke about a profound hadith. Charity does not decrease wealth. But this time, Omar didn't just hear it. He felt it. He looked around the masjid at the men praying shoulder to shoulder, the young boys memorizing Quran, the elders whispering dua, and he realized why charity purifies wealth. Because when you give for Allah, the blessings you receive are not measured in dollars. They're measured in peace, in clarity, in freedom from the chains of greed. Walking out of the masjid, he felt lighter than he had in years. His wealth was cleaner, his heart was cleaner, and his purpose clearer than ever. The dua that found its way back. Ramadan nights in Chicago had a special kind of silence. Not empty, but peaceful. A silence that made your heart louder. And that night, as Omar walked home from the masjid, he realized something he hadn't noticed before. His heart was making dua on its own, without him even speaking. He didn't ask for money. He didn't ask for success. He didn't ask for comfort. The only thing echoing inside him was, "Ya Allah, guide me." It felt strange, because for years his duas were transactional. Whenever he raised his hands, it was only when he wanted something: promotion, stability, a better apartment. But now, something had shifted. When he reached home, he sat on his prayer mat, the lights dim, the room quiet except for the humming of the fridge. He raised his hands gently and whispered a dua he hadn't made since childhood. "Ya Allah, make me useful." The words surprised him. Where did they come from? Why useful? Then it hit him. Because wealth without purpose becomes a burden, and a heart without service becomes hard. As he finished dua, he received a message from an unknown number. It was the volunteer from the shelter. She wrote, We gave the family temporary housing today. Whoever helped them earlier changed their Ramadan completely. Omar stared at the message for a long moment. He didn't reply, didn't want any credit, but his eyes softened. The timing felt divine, almost like Allah was showing him, your dua is already being answered. The next day at work, something unusual happened. The stress that usually consumed him felt lighter. He didn't snap at emails. He didn't get irritated by deadlines. Even the loud co-worker who annoyed everyone didn't bother him. He felt grounded, centered, clean. During lunch break, instead of sitting with colleagues, he walked outside and saw a man selling water bottles and dates for iftar. His clothes were worn, his hands tired, yet he smiled at everyone who passed by. Omar approached him, bought everything on the stall, and told the man to go home early for iftar. The man looked at him with grateful eyes and said, "Brother, you don't know whose dua you just answered." Those words struck him deeper than anything else that day, because Omar realized sometimes Allah uses your charity to answer someone else's prayers, and sometimes He uses their gratitude to answer yours, a blessing that didn't look like a blessing. A few days later, as Ramadan moved deeper into its quiet nights and reflective mornings, Omar faced something unexpected, a challenge, a test, a moment that, on the surface, seemed unfair but underneath held wisdom. He arrived at work to find an email from his manager. A mistake had been found in one of the financial reports. A big mistake, one that could cost the company thousands. The blame at least temporarily fell on him. His stomach tightened. His old self would have panicked, defended himself instantly, maybe even argued. But this time, something inside him whispered, "Stay calm. Allah sees everything." He walked into the meeting room where the management team waited. His manager looked frustrated, tapping on the table. "Omar, this error, it's serious." He didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice. He simply said, "Let me check everything again. If it's my fault, I'll fix it." There was silence. His calmness surprised everyone. After hours of reviewing documents, he discovered the truth. It wasn't his mistake at all. Another department had sent him incorrect data. He presented his findings respectfully, without anger or ego. His manager exhaled slowly. "Omar, thank you." Most people would have lost their minds over this. Omar simply smiled. It's Ramadan, but deep inside, he understood something powerful. Purified wealth creates a purified heart, and a purified heart handles tests differently. Later that evening, he went to the masjid for Taraweeh. While praying, he thought about the incident at work, and that's when a realization struck him so clearly. It felt like a message placed gently into his heart. Sometimes Allah tests you right after you give charity, not to punish you, but to clean the last pieces of arrogance hiding inside. When he finished Taraweeh, an elderly man approached him, struggling with his walker. Omar immediately reached out to steady him. The old man whispered, "Blessed is the one whose tests make him softer, not harder." Those words sank deep. That night, while driving home, he felt it. The test wasn't a setback. It was a blessing in disguise, a chance to prove that charity hadn't just changed his bank account. It had changed him. He was becoming patient, calmer, more trusting, more connected to Allah. And this was only the beginning. The night the masjid felt like home. As the days of Ramadan continued, Omar found himself drawn to the masjid more than ever before. What used to be a place he visited out of duty now felt like a place that pulled him in. A place where his heart felt lighter, his worries felt smaller, and his soul felt understood. One Friday night, the masjid was unusually full. Families, students, elderly people with canes, kids running around between the shoe racks. Everyone gathered for a special community iftar. Omar arrived early, not because he had nowhere else to be, but because, for the first time in years, he wanted to be around believers. He helped arrange dates on plates, carry water bottles, spread mats, and serve food. People smiled at him, thanked him, included him as if he had been part of their community forever. It felt warm, real, like finally being home after a long journey. During the meal, an elderly uncle sat beside him. He had kind eyes and a soft voice. Between bites of dates and sips of water, he asked Omar a simple question. "My son, what brought you close to the masjid this year?" Omar paused. There were 100 answers. The mother and her kids, the envelope, the night his dua changed, the man at the stall, the test at work, the peace that followed. But he chose the one truth that wrapped all others together. "My heart needed cleaning." The old uncle smiled, placed a hand over Omar's, and said something he never forgot. "Then Allah guided you here, because the masjid, it cleans hearts the way rain cleans the earth." Those words settled in him like seeds ready to grow. After iftar and maghrib, the imam gave a short reminder. He spoke about how charity doesn't just purify wealth, it purifies intentions. He said, "Sometimes Allah brings you to the masjid through a moment of generosity, because when you give, you connect. When you connect, you return. And when you return, you are never the same again." Omar felt those words in his bones. It wasn't the money he gave that changed him. It was what the giving awakened inside him. A desire to be closer to Allah. A desire to be better. A desire to serve. That night, as he stood for Taraweeh, he looked around at the rows of believers and thought, "I finally understand. This is what my soul was starving for." Charity didn't take anything from him. It brought him home. The wallet he couldn't keep closed. Ramadan was moving fast, and with every passing day, Omar felt something new awakening inside him. His heart was softer. His mind was clearer. His soul was lighter. But there was one change he didn't expect at all. He couldn't stop giving. It wasn't planned. It wasn't forced. It wasn't done for reward. It simply flowed. On his way to work, if he saw a man shivering at a bus stop, he bought him breakfast. If he found a donation box in the masjid, he slipped bills inside without looking. If someone needed help carrying groceries, he stepped forward. His wallet wasn't losing money. It was losing weight, and his heart was losing heaviness. One evening, after ASR, he sat on a bench outside the masjid. A young teenager approached him, selling small handmade bracelets. His clothes were worn, his shoes torn, but he stood tall, trying to look confident. "Mister, would you buy one?" the boy asked politely. "How much?" Omar asked. $5. Omar took one bracelet, admired the simple thread and little beads, then reached into his wallet and gave the boy a 20. The boy's eyes widened. "Mister, I don't have change." "It's for you," Omar said softly. "Keep the rest." The boy stared at him, speechless for a moment. Then he whispered words Omar felt deep in his chest. "My mom told me Allah sends good people in Ramadan." She was right. That sentence, it wasn't a compliment. It was a mirror, because Omar suddenly realized something he hadn't allowed himself to believe. Maybe Allah was using him again, not because he was perfect, but because he was finally willing. Later that night, as he drove home, he glanced at the bracelet on his wrist. Something so small, yet it felt like a reminder of where he started, of who he used to be, of the emptiness he carried, and of the generosity that awakened him. Suddenly, he remembered a hadith the Imam once mentioned. The most beloved deeds to Allah are those done consistently, even if small. Maybe his giving wasn't huge, maybe it wasn't dramatic, but it was consistent, pure, and from the heart. He didn't know it yet, but this new habit of giving, this open wallet he couldn't close, was about to lead him toward the biggest transformation of his life. Test hidden behind a knock. The following week, just a few days before the last 10 nights of Ramadan, Omar returned home late from Taraweeh. His body was tired, but his heart felt alive. He placed his keys on the counter, changed clothes, and was about to sit with a glass of water when knock, knock, knock. A slow, hesitant knock at the door. At first, he froze. It was almost midnight. Who could it be? He approached the door carefully and looked through the peephole. It was his neighbor, Mr. Harris, an older man who lived alone on the same floor. He rarely spoke to anyone, kept to himself, and limped slightly when he walked. His eyes tonight looked worried. Omar opened the door immediately. "Are you okay, sir?" he asked. The old man exhaled shakily. I didn't want to bother you, but my electricity got shut off. I thought I paid the bill, but I guess I missed something. I can't see well at night, and I just didn't know who else to ask." His voice broke on the last sentence. Omar didn't even think. "Come inside. Sit down. I'll handle it." As the man stepped in slowly, Omar felt something rise in his chest, compassion mixed with responsibility. He guided Mr. Harris to the couch, gave him a glass of water, then pulled up the utility company's website. The bill wasn't small. In fact, anyone else would have hesitated. It was enough to tighten anyone's chest. But Omar didn't blink. He paid it instantly. When he returned to the living room, Mr. Harris looked up, expecting disappointment. "It's done," Omar said softly. "Your lights will come back in a few minutes." The old man stared at him with disbelief. You paid it. But why? You don't even know me." Omar smiled gently. "Because maybe Allah wanted you to knock on my door tonight." Mr. Harris covered his face, overcome with emotion. "You don't know how hard these last few months have been. My daughter lives far. My health is failing. I've been praying for help." He paused, voice trembling. "And tonight, help knocked back." Those words hit Omar like a wave, because suddenly he understood something deeper than anything he had learned so far. Charity isn't always giving to strangers. Sometimes Allah sends you someone standing right next to you to see whether your heart has truly changed. And that night, through a simple knock, Allah showed Omar exactly how far he had come. The night his wealth finally spoke the truth. The next evening, with the last 10 nights approaching, Omar sat alone in his apartment, thinking about everything that had happened over the past weeks. The envelope, the shelter, the dua, the bracelet, the neighbor's knock. He realized something profound. Every act of charity had changed him far more than it changed anyone he helped. But tonight, a new thought entered his mind. A difficult one, an honest one he had avoided for years. He opened his phone, unlocked his financial app, and stared at his savings. A large amount he had kept hidden just in case. Not haram, not forbiddance, but heavy. So heavy that even he didn't notice how much it controlled him. And then a voice inside him whispered, "If you trust Allah for your future, why are you holding on so tightly to your past?" He leaned back, closed his eyes, and breathed deeply. His heart was finally ready to confront the truth he had buried for years. Wealth is supposed to serve you, not own you. With a steady hand, he selected an organization he trusted, one that built wells, fed orphans, supported refugees, and provided homes for families who had nothing. He didn't plan to empty his savings. He didn't plan to give a huge amount. He just planned to give something. But when he began typing the amount, his fingers didn't stop. 1,000, 2,000, 5, 10. His hand trembled, but it didn't stop. Because deep down, he knew this wasn't losing money. This was freeing his soul. He clicked confirm. A second later, a notification popped up. Donation successful. Omar exhaled slowly. Not fear, not regret, not uncertainty, just peace. A peace he had never felt before. A peace that wrapped around him like a warm blanket. A peace that whispered, "You finally let go." He stood, walked to his prayer corner, and prayed to Rakah. Not for money, not for reward, but out of gratitude, for a heart that was no longer chained by wealth. After the prayer, he whispered, "Ya Allah, I finally understand. Zakat doesn't purify my wealth, it purifies me." And that night, for the first time in his adult life, Omar slept with a heart lighter than the air, and wealth that finally spoke the truth. I belong to Allah, and I was always meant to be shared. The angels who recorded what he didn't see. The next morning, the world felt different to Omar, quieter, brighter, almost cleaner. It wasn't because anything externally had changed. His apartment was the same. His job was the same. His routine was the same. But he wasn't. When he woke up for suhoor, the air felt lighter. His chest felt open. His thoughts felt calm. And for the first time in years, he didn't check his bank balance out of habit. Instead, he opened the Quran. As he read, a verse struck him like lightning. Whatever you give, the angels write it, and Allah multiplies it. He closed the book slowly, letting the words echo inside him. He had seen the effects of giving on earth. The smiles, the prayers, the tears, the unexpected peace. But he had forgotten something bigger. Every single act of charity was recorded in the unseen. Not the amount, not the receipt, Not the transaction ID, but the intention. The moment his heart softened. The moment he chose generosity over fear. The moment he put trust over numbers. Later in the day, Omar visited the masjid for dua. It was quiet, only a few elders, sitting with prayer beads. As he prayed, he felt something unusual. A presence, not physical, but spiritual. When he finished, the Imam approached him gently. "Brother Omar," he said with a warm smile, "I've been noticing you these past days. You look lighter." Omar laughed softly. "I feel lighter." The Imam nodded knowingly. That's what happens when the angels carry your deeds instead of your worries. The words stopped Omar in his tracks. "Angels carrying my deeds," he whispered to himself. On the drive home, he kept thinking about that concept. Every donation he made, every small act of kindness, every moment of restraint, every quiet prayer captured, preserved, protected for him. Not a single drop lost, not a single act unnoticed, not a single sacrifice forgotten. That evening, while scrolling on his phone, he received an email from the charity organization he donated to the night before. It included photos of families receiving iftar packages, smiles so sincere they almost looked unreal. He stared at the images for a long time. None of those people knew his name. None knew who helped them. None knew whose money fed their families. But the angels knew. Allah knew, and that was enough. For the first time in his life, Omar understood the true meaning of giving. You don't give to be seen on earth. You give to be remembered in the heavens. The night his dua finally found its wings. The last 10 nights of Ramadan had begun. The nights everyone waits for. The nights when hearts soften, sins melt, and the gates of mercy open wider than ever. And on the first night of this blessed stretch, Omar felt something tugging him toward the masjid again, stronger than before. Not out of habit, not out of guilt, but out of longing. A longing for closeness, a longing for forgiveness, a longing to be heard. The masjid was dim, peaceful, lit only by soft lanterns and the quiet hum of believers whispering their duas. Omar found a place in the corner where the world felt distant and the heavens felt near. When the Imam began reciting, the verses hit differently. Verses about mercy, about forgiveness, about those who spend their wealth seeking only Allah's pleasure. Every word felt personal, as if the Quran was speaking directly to him. After Taraweeh, the Imam reminded the congregation, "These are the nights when duas take flight. Ask Allah for everything, everything." Omar sat back against the wall, closed his eyes, and let his heart open. But tonight, his dua wasn't about money. It wasn't about success. It wasn't about comfort. His voice trembled as he whispered, "Ya Allah, make me someone you love." That was it. 6 simple words, but they carried the weight of his entire journey. And then something happened. As he raised his hands, tears slipped down his face, tears he didn't expect, tears he didn't plan, tears that came from a place so deep he didn't even recognize it at first. For the first time in years, he cried because he felt connected. All the charity he had given, all the hearts he had helped, all the tests he had faced, they led him here, to this moment, to this night, to this softness. It felt as if the heavy walls around his heart finally cracked open, letting the light in. He didn't know how long he sat there, whispering Amin. But when he finally opened his eyes, he felt different. Not empty, not emotional, not overwhelmed, just whole. As he walked out of the masjid into the cool night breeze, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. His dua had wings now, and it was finally taking flight. He didn't know what the future held. He didn't know which blessings were coming, but he knew one thing for sure. Allah had heard him. The blessing that follows you. There are moments in a believer's life when they look back and realize that the blessings they enjoy didn't come from their strength, skills, or talent, but from a small, quiet act of charity they once gave for the sake of Allah. Zakat and Sadaqah have a unique way of following you like a shadow of mercy that never leaves your side, even when you don't notice it. In Ramadan, this effect becomes even stronger. Every dollar you give multiplies, every act of kindness expands, and every sacrifice you make turns into a silent guardian walking beside you. Take the story of Ion, a young man who lived in Chicago. He had always struggled financially, juggling 2 jobs just to stay afloat. Yet he had a habit, something simple, something pure. Every Ramadan, he set aside a small envelope of money labeled, "For someone who needs it more than me." Some years, that envelope had only $20. Other years, maybe $50. But he gave it consistently, without breaking the habit. One day, right before Ramadan, Ion's car broke down. The repair cost was so high that he knew he couldn't afford it. Without a car, he risked losing his job. He sat in the garage office, stressed, exhausted, and defeated. Then, something unexpected happened. The mechanic walked over and said, "You don't remember me, do you? Last winter, you paid for a stranger's gas at the station. It was me. I was going through a tough time. You helped me without even knowing. So this repair, consider it taken care of." Ion broke down in tears. His small envelope of charity had returned to him in the most unexpected, perfectly timed way. This is how charity works. You think you're giving something away, but in reality, you are planting seeds of protection and blessings that grow silently in places you can't see. Zakat purifies your wealth, yes, but Sadaqah, especially in Ramadan, purifies your journey. It places invisible assistance in your path, turning strangers into helpers, obstacles into ease, and moments of crisis into moments of divine rescue. Blessings don't just come to you. They follow you. They guard you. They arrive exactly when Allah wants them to. And all of it begins with that simple act, giving for His sake, with no expectation except His mercy. The wealth you can't see. There's a kind of wealth that never shows up in your bank balance, never appears on your tax documents, and never gets counted by the world. Yet it is the most powerful form of wealth a believer can ever possess. It's the wealth Allah stores for you, the wealth you can't see. This invisible wealth grows every time you give zakat, every time you offer sadaqah, and every time you help someone without expecting anything in return. Ramadan multiplies this unseen treasure so much that a single dollar given in sincerity can return to you as a lifetime of blessings. But because you can't see it, many people think it doesn't exist. Let me tell you about Yusuf, a medical student in New Jersey, who learned this lesson the hard way. He was brilliant, hard-working, and determined to become a doctor. But college debt was crushing him. Some months he didn't even know how he would afford groceries. One Ramadan night, as he walked home from Taraweeh, he saw an old man sitting near the masjid entrance. His clothes were worn out, his hands shaking from the cold. Yusuf hesitated. He barely had anything himself, but something in his heart whispered, "Give." So he reached into his pocket and offered the man his last $10. The man looked up with watery eyes and said, "May Allah open doors for you that you can't even imagine." Yusuf didn't think much of it then. To him, it was just a small act of kindness. But what happened next changed everything. A few weeks later, he received an email from his university. A full scholarship had been approved for him, covering his remaining years of medical school. He hadn't even applied for it. A professor he didn't know personally had nominated him after hearing about his dedication and struggles. Years later, when Yusuf became a doctor, he would think back to that cold Ramadan night and that trembling old man. He realized something profound. Sometimes Allah takes what little you have and returns it to you as a life you never expected. This is the wealth people don't see. This is the return that can't be measured. This is the blessing that grows in silence. When you give for the sake of Allah, you are never losing. You're simply transferring your wealth from your hands to His protection. When charity speaks for you, there will come a day when your voice won't matter. Your wealth, your status, your achievements, none of it will speak for you. But one thing will: the charity you gave sincerely for the sake of Allah, Zakat and Sadaqah, become witnesses on the day of judgment, standing beside you when no one else can. But charity doesn't just speak for you in the hereafter. Sometimes it even speaks for you in this life. In Houston, there lived a businessman named Kareem. He wasn't extremely rich, but he had a habit that defined him. He quietly helped people. He paid grocery bills for struggling families, sponsored Islamic classes for kids, and always set aside a portion of his income, no matter how small, to give in Ramadan. One year, his business hit a crisis. A major investor pulled out unexpectedly, leaving him with unpaid loans and a collapsing company. Overnight, Kareem went from stable to struggling. Banks refused to lend him money, clients backed out, and competitors took advantage of the chaos. He felt cornered. One evening, frustrated and exhausted, he sat in the masjid courtyard after Asr. As he raised his hands in dua, he whispered, "Ya Allah, I don't have anything left but the charity I once gave in your name. Let that speak for me today." The next morning, he received a phone call from a man named Fahad, someone Kareem barely recognized. Years earlier, Kareem had helped Fahad's family during a financial crisis, paying their rent without telling anyone. "I heard what happened to your business," Fahad said. "I never forgot what you did for me. I have a proposal for you. Let's rebuild this together." Fahad wasn't just offering money. He brought in a major partnership opportunity, new investors, and a network that Kareem could have never accessed alone. Within months, Kareem's company didn't just recover, it expanded beyond anything he had imagined. Later, during a quiet Ramadan night, Kareem reflected on everything. He realized Allah had sent back the charity he once gave, but this time it came back multiplied, strengthened, and filled with mercy. Charity speaks. It speaks when your strength collapses. It speaks when your plans fall apart. It speaks when no one understands your struggle. Every dollar you give, every act of kindness you perform, every zakat payment you make, it all gathers as an army of witnesses, silently waiting for the moment Allah commands them to speak on your behalf. The doors that open only for the givers. There are certain doors in life, doors of opportunity, peace, healing, and unexpected relief that don't open because of your effort, intelligence, or connections. They open because of the charity you once gave when no one was watching. Zakat purifies what you have, but Sadaqah opens what you don't. In Ramadan, these doors unlock even faster. Let me share the story of Samira, a single mother living in California. She worked long hours, raised two kids alone, and carried the weight of life silently on her shoulders. Her income was barely enough, yet every Ramadan she did one thing consistently. She donated a small amount, sometimes $5, sometimes $10, to help families in need. She believed deeply that charity never decreases wealth, even when her wallet seemed to say otherwise. One year, near Ramadan, her daughter became seriously ill. Doctors couldn't figure out the cause. Tests after tests drained her financially and emotionally. Samira felt helpless watching her child struggle, praying through every night, hoping for some kind of breakthrough. One afternoon, after leaving the hospital, she stopped by the masjid. She didn't plan to stay long, but she found an envelope on the donation table labeled, "For mothers who are struggling." She froze. She wasn't there to take charity. She came to pray. She almost walked past it, but something inside her whispered, "Allah sends help in different ways." She hesitated, then took the envelope and placed it inside her bag with trembling hands. Later that night, she opened it. Inside was $300, not a fortune, but exactly enough to cover the medicine her daughter needed for the next week. She cried, not because of the money, but because of the timing. It came at the exact moment she had no strength left. The next few days changed everything. Her daughter began improving slowly, then rapidly. The doctors were shocked. What they predicted would take months happened in days. In that moment, Samira realized a deep truth. The doors she needed didn't open because she knocked. They opened because she had opened doors for others. Charity has a way of circling back, sometimes as healing, sometimes as protection, sometimes as help from unexpected hands, but it always returns. When you give even a little, you unlock a door you don't even know you'll need someday. And Allah, in His perfect timing, opens it right when your heart is too tired to push. The hidden shield around your life. There are blessings you can count, and then there are blessings you will never know about until the day of judgment. One of the most powerful truths in Islam is this: Sadaqah becomes a shield and invisible protection, guarding you from harm you never even saw coming. People think charity only gives reward, but charity also blocks disasters. Let me tell you about Hamza, a software engineer living in Virginia. He wasn't extremely religious, but every Ramadan he felt something awaken inside him, a softness, a pull toward generosity. So he made a rule for himself. He would give charity every single day of Ramadan, even if it was just $1. Consistency he would say, is better than a big amount once. One Ramadan night, Hamza left the masjid after Taraweeh and noticed a young college student struggling to carry groceries. Without thinking twice, he rushed to help him, then paid for his remaining items at the store. It was a small moment, something Hamza forgot about by the next day. But Allah didn't. A week later, on his way to work, Hamza got stuck in traffic. Annoyed, he took a longer route he never used. That detour frustrated him, but he resigned himself to it. Later that evening, he heard the news. A massive car accident had taken place right on his usual route at the exact time he would have been driving there. His heart sank. He replayed the morning in his mind, realizing the inconvenience that annoyed him had actually saved his life. And deep inside, a thought whispered, maybe Allah diverted your path because of the charity you gave. That night, during Isha, the Imam recited a hadith. Charity extinguishes calamities. Hamza froze. The words hit him like a strike of lightning. He thought about all the moments he didn't understand: delays, detours, missed opportunities, inconveniences that made no sense at the time. What if those were all protections? What if charity had been shielding him again and again without him knowing? From that day, Hamza never looked at Sadaqah the same way. Charity is not just something you give. It is something that guards you. It shields your health, your family, your future, your footsteps, your journey even when you're unaware. Ramadan amplifies that shield. Every act of giving becomes a barrier of light around your life, protecting you from what was never meant to reach you. And on the day of judgment, when the truth is revealed, many will discover that the calamities that never came were stopped by the charity they once gave quietly, sincerely, and only for Allah. When Allah replaces what you give, there is a divine promise that echoes through the Quran and Hadith. Whatever you give for the sake of Allah, He replaces it with something better always. It may not come in the form you expect, but it comes with a wisdom so perfect that you only understand it when the moment arrives. This is the story of Ilyas, a truck driver in Michigan. His life was simple: long drives, long nights, and long stretches of silence on the highway. Money was always tight, but he had one habit his father taught him: give charity secretly, so only Allah sees it. Every Ramadan, without fail, he would slip a small donation into the masjid box after Fajr, sometimes $5, sometimes $10, whatever he could manage. He never told anyone, not his friends, not his family. It was his personal conversation with Allah. One Ramadan, tragedy struck. His truck broke down during a long delivery, miles away from the nearest town. The repair cost was extreme. Worse, missing work meant missing income, and missing income meant falling behind on rent. For the first time in his life, Ilyas felt real fear of losing everything. He sat on the side of the highway, exhausted, dust on his clothes, head buried in his hands. "Ya Allah," he whispered, "I don't have anyone but you." As he waited for help, a car pulled over. A man stepped out, walked toward him, and said, "Are you Ilyas?" Confused, Ilyas nodded. The man smiled gently. "You don't know me, but my mother does. Every Ramadan for the last few years, she found an envelope of money in the donation box. labeled anonymously for widows and elders. My mother always prayed for the person who gave it. Today, when I saw you stranded, something in my heart told me to stop. The man paid for the full repair on the spot. And before leaving, he said, my mother asked me to repay kindness whenever I could. Maybe this is Allah sending your charity back to you. In that moment, Elias felt the truth sink deep into his soul. Allah does not let a single act of charity disappear. He stores it. He guards it. And when the moment is right, He returns it multiplied. Sometimes He replaces your money, sometimes your opportunities, sometimes your health, sometimes your ease, but He always replaces it. Because what you give for His sake, He never lets you lose the blessings you never asked for. There are moments in life when Allah sends blessings you didn't raise your hands for, blessings you didn't imagine, didn't expect, and didn't even know you needed. And often, these blessings are written in your destiny because of a quiet act of charity you once gave with a sincere heart. Mariam, a college student in Florida, learned this truth in the most unexpected way. She came from a struggling background, working part-time, studying full-time, and trying to balance life in a world that constantly demanded more than she had. Ramadan was the only time she felt spiritually grounded, the only month she felt connected beyond her worries. One Ramadan night, after Taraweeh, she saw a donation box for refugees. She had only $7 in her wallet, the last bit she had before her paycheck later that week. She hesitated, feeling torn between her needs and the needs of others. But her heart whispered, "Give it. Allah will take care of you." So she dropped all $7 into the box, quietly, without telling anyone. Days passed. She forgot about it, but Allah didn't. Final exams approached. The pressure was crushing, and Mariam desperately wanted an internship for the summer, something that could help her career and financially support her family. She applied everywhere and heard nothing back. Not a single response. One morning, out of nowhere, she received an email. "Congratulations! You have been selected for a paid research internship with full scholarship coverage." She stared at the screen in disbelief. She hadn't even applied for this specific program. A professor she'd once helped with organizing an event recommended her. Without telling her, her life shifted overnight. Suddenly, she had financial stability. Suddenly, she had an opportunity students dreamed of. Suddenly, the doors of her future opened wide. Tears filled her eyes, not because of the internship, but because she felt a deep realization. This wasn't my effort. This was Allah returning the charity I gave, in a way I never even asked for. This is how Allah works. Sometimes He gives you what you pray for. Sometimes He gives you what you hope for. But sometimes He gives you blessings you never even thought to ask, all because of a small act of giving. $1, a gesture, a sacrifice, a sincere intention. Ramadan multiplies these moments. Your charity becomes a seed that grows into blessings far beyond your imagination. The wealth that follows you into eternity. There comes a moment in every believer's life when they realize a simple truth. Everything you own will one day leave you, except what you gave for the sake of Allah. Your house, your bank balance, your clothes, Your cars, none of it follows you past the grave. But your charity does. Your zakat does. Your sadaqah does. Your kindness does. It becomes the only wealth that travels with you into eternity. This final part brings us to the story of Abdul Rahman, an elderly man in Chicago. He spent his whole life working as a mechanic, repairing cars, wiping grease off his hands, and raising his children with halal earnings. He was never rich, not by the world's standards, but he had a habit that made him wealthy. In the sight of Allah, every Ramadan, he calculated his zakat with extreme care. Every Friday, he gave something even if it was small. Every time he saw someone in need, he gave before he spoke. His charity was quiet, sincere, and hidden. In his old age, Abdul Rahman fell ill. Doctors informed his family that he didn't have long. One night, as he lay in the hospital bed, his son asked him, "Baba, are you scared?" He smiled weakly and said, "No, my son, I have sent enough ahead." His son didn't understand until after his father passed away. The night after his burial, his son had a dream. He saw his father walking in a garden filled with light, peaceful, healthy, smiling in a way he hadn't seen in years. Flowers surrounded him, rivers sparkled beside him, and angels walked with him as if escorting an honored guest. His father turned toward him and said, "Tell the people, the charity you give becomes your home here." The son woke up crying. He understood the message. His father wasn't rich in dunya, but he was rich where it mattered most. Every act of giving, every dollar, every moment, every sacrifice had been transformed into eternal comfort. That is the real wealth. The wealth that greets you. The wealth that comforts you. The wealth that follows you into the next world. Ramadan is the month where this wealth multiplies beyond imagination. Zakat purifies what you have. Sadaqah beautifies what you send ahead. And every sincere act of giving becomes a light that never fades. In the end, only two things remain with you forever: your faith and your charity. That is the true wealth of a believer.